Well, in this profession, perhaps the moment we journalists tend to love the most is the opportunity to meet and learn from what I believe are wonderful people. People who have defied all kinds of odds and are changing the world in ways we can't even imagine. Today is one such moment. In the same way that mobile phones perhaps was a revolution that changed the lives of billions of people in our country, we could be on the brink of something as big, something as transformational. E-commerce, which is essentially shopping, paying, transacting on the internet. E-commerce could eliminate the middleman and in many, many ways could be as empowering to the poorest in this country as mobile phones have been. I think mobile phones, for example, have increased our growth rate by about 2% a year. Are we on the brink of another revolution like that, that may transform our society? Where we couldn't have a finer set of minds to inform and educate us on what lies ahead for India with this new applied kind of technology. So if you want to take a peek and understand the future of India, or if you're a youngster and are watching and want to build a unicorn enterprise, sit back and listen to these leaders of a brave new world. Nikesh Arora is probably one of the most successful Indians around the globe. He held one of the top jobs at Google and now is head of SoftBank, which funds dozens and dozens of our youngsters and helps them make their dreams into a reality. God bless you, Nikesh, for that. Vijay Shekhar Sharma is in the middle of a quiet revolution. He's changing the way in which we buy and sell and get loans and credit. And I don't say if, I say when his dream is fully realized, India will move towards a cashless society with less black money and transaction system that will empower the poorest. It has happened in some other countries. We're going to see it in India too. I have a little disclosure to make here. Vijay's organization, Paytm, is one of our channel sponsors. Actually, it's more than a disclosure. I'm proud that Paytm is associated with us. Kunal Bahl, founder and creator of Snapdeal, a short story that Kunal told me once will explain exactly what his mission is. A housewife from Surat tried to make ends meet every day by selling saris. She would go from shop to shop pleading with the powerful owners to display her saris and sell them properly. She needed the money. She'd be treated with disdain, to put it mildly, and eventually would earn a few thousand rupees a month at best. Then she placed her saris on Snapdeal. No middleman, no arrogant shopkeepers to deal with. And now she earns 20 crores a year. That's called transformation. And the youngest in our already young minds here, Ritesh Agarwal, founder of Oyo Rooms. Ideal for youngsters who want to travel around India. But life hasn't always been easy for Ritesh. In fact, for none of these gentlemen. If you think life is tough and you want to do something in life yourself, just listen to these life stories. So Ritesh, you have slept on staircases, I read about. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. But when you're very young, a lot of these things actually feel like
some time ago, not now, right? When you're very young. You're 22 now?
Yeah, 22 now. Okay. Growing older by the day.
Okay. So what happened then when you were very young, really young?
Sorry. So I remember for 3.5 months, I got off staying at hotels, guest houses and so on. And that was one of the most important periods where I realized that the problem was not in finding accommodations. The problem was in finding trusted accommodations. Right. But back then, I felt this was the leisure trip. This was one of those periods between your 12th grade and getting into the college, right, where you have this 5 or 6 months where you do what you want to do. And this was the thing that I wanted to do. 3.5 months later, I was out of cash, so I could not continue my leisure trip. So I had to get back at the place where I was staying. When I got back, in Delhi, generally the security amounts are for 2 months. So in the Barsati that I used to live, 2 months security was lapsed. So the owner got somebody else to stay. And I didn't have many friends in the city. My family was back at Orissa. And the question was, if you came back, and because your landlord had got all your stuff back at his storeroom, if you called back your home, they would say, get on the first train and come back to Bhubaneswar.
Yeah, they'll be worried.
Yeah, and you know, when you're building something, you can, and this almost everyone can relate to, in those times you can almost feel very strongly that I know I screwed up for the last few months, but I exactly know what I want to do now. And from here, I don't want to go back saying that I don't want to build this thing anymore. So I think that conviction makes you feel that, it's just a few days and doesn't matter. So I think I never felt bad about it. I actually enjoyed it as much. Looking back, I feel they were a box of cherries. Yeah.
Box of cherries. But how do you eat? Cherries are expensive.
I think, yeah, not cherries, definitely. But for a long time, and this guy still remains, it's a funny story. So we had a chole kulcha wala. In Delhi, it's a normal thing, right? Right next to our office.
Lovely stuff.
Yeah, so this guy
used to be your heart and your cholesterol and everything. But you don't have to worry about that.
This guy used to be our official vendor, first official vendor. We actually told him that if you send it to our office, we have a 15% discount. Right? And we gave him enough business before that for, by the time I was running this, before I had gone out for this 3 to 4 months. So he used to feed me for a couple of days until I found friends whose houses I started staying in. So found good friends. I still remain in connect with him. He's still an official vendor for us, but yeah.
Well, I have two things in common with you. I lived in a Barsati and I slept on the streets in Paris as a student because I had no money. How come I didn't become a unicorn or a billionaire? I mean, you could have easily funded me. What in your life, when somebody comes to these youngsters, how do you decide whether to say yes or no? It's a tough one.
That's a tough one, right? Look, on a broader scale, you obviously look at what they're talking about. Yeah. Do you believe this is a real market? Right. Does this have scope? And that's not a hard assessment to make. You understand business around the world. Right. You have a thesis that, you talked about the big transformation, that internet is about to create a big transformation. Right. So,
do you believe that actually?
Part of what I believe, actually, what is happening is that on a broader scale, deployment of technology is creating infinite choice. So I can sit in my living room or my bedroom and watch everything that I can get. I was reading the Indian newspapers and they're talking about 24/7, or letting bricks and mortar stores stay open 24/7 because these guys on the internet are now open all night. So that now the way to compete is let's hire people and stay open all night.
You're making us all work twice as hard.
There we go, exactly. So what they're doing is they're giving you infinite choice. Now imagine if you're living in a small village somewhere, you don't know what's out there. So you definitely are going to drive more consumerism. Right. But also you're driving tremendous amounts of access to information. Right. So when you have access to information, it usually is a good thing for society. You talked about a 2% growth rate. I mean, look at our history, global history.
This is going to add another 2-3% to our growth rate.
Right. So I think all that stuff is going to be good. I think every traditional business as it has existed is going to get disrupted. Right. Now is Oyo an internet company which allows you to find accommodation, or is Oyo the new model for the hospitality in the future? Right. Is Paytm a transaction business where they're trying to make you cashless and be a cloud business, or are they going to fundamentally change how lending happens in the future and how we interact with financial institutions? Right. Is Snapdeal e-commerce, or is Snapdeal commerce? Right. And traditional bricks and mortars is an inefficient model that over time will go away. So I think these are fundamental questions. So you can actually look at the model and say, yes, I believe these guys are going to transform effectively how business is done in the country. And when you say, when that transformation happens, some degrees of efficiency is going to be brought into the picture. Right. Some these guys will keep, some they will give back to the woman selling saris for 20 crores a year because she doesn't have to deal with middlemen, arrogant shopkeepers. So I think you assess the opportunity, you see what the opportunity is, you see what the market looks like, you see how long it's going to take.
Some youngster coming to you first should have a transformational idea. It should be a big
they should have an idea.
A scope, have an idea.
They should have an idea. They should show that there is real thought behind it, and they are intelligent how they think about it. They should have thought about all the different elements around it.
Yes.
Because you're effectively assessing that individual on their ability to think through problems. Right. I've had the privilege of meeting all these three gentlemen before.
You mean the person on the right convinced you?
Person on the right is very convincing. So are the other two people on your left.
Convince me as well.
Right. So I think you look at them and listen to them and say, okay, these guys understand the market, they have a big idea. Right. But then it really boils down to them. Because in their journey over the next 15, 20 years, they're going to run into lots and lots of issues which they're going to have to navigate around.
Which are brand new issues, that others may not have solved them, you'll be doing it yourself.
Or they're going to be faced with decisions.
You changed your whole business model when you visited China and came back, and people had funded you with the old model and you said, so sorry. I mean, that's a bold decision. So when you see an individual like that, one is the idea, the other is the individual. So how would a youngster impress you?
Again, look, we're not early stage investors, because that requires a lot more intelligence than I have. Sit down and understand exactly whether the idea is going to be there and whether they're going to beat the 500 people around them. So we are effectively late stage investors. So by that time, they've actually shown some execution, shown that they actually can go execute in the market.
The judge is a tough thing to do.
Yeah, and you get some right and you get some wrong.
Yeah.
You can't say you're going to get 10 out of 10 right. That's something we have to understand in India as well.
Strike rate.
You in the media, the most trusted media of this country, is out there, and you actually make a big deal about everything. So the risk is some of these things are not going to work out. From our perspective, we have to make sure we get 6 out of 10 right, 7 out of 10 right.
It's a terrific strike rate.
It's a huge strike rate.
You can't be Sehwag here.
Eventually he has to retire, right?
Right. And Vijay, it's a pretty tough story as well, but you've also had a very tough story. I was interviewing Amir Khan and Bill Gates, and I said one thing in common between these two is they're both dropouts. And a lot of people love that because there are a lot of dropouts around. And you're a dropout. So are you actually, right?
Never went to college, so you might
it's
being a dropout.
What's better, being an IIT or a dropout? Dropout probably.
No, I think education is definitely needed because it at least gets you a club of getting ticked. If you not
I think
get
in
education.
general on education, right? I think education is important, but you should never let college interfere with your education. So education can be in various other ways.
That's a good one. You never let college interfere. You had quite a tough time in college.
Yeah, actually,
if I remember, you got to college when you were too young to go to college also. You finished class 12 when you were 14 or something?
Yeah, that's right. I completed class 12th when I was 14, except that I had a trouble in language that I got educated in. I was educated in Hindi medium, so I had to appear at exams which were in English medium.
In college?
Yeah, so actually entrance test itself. So 1 year I took a drop for that. So I was still teenage, 15-year-old when I was in Delhi College of Engineering for engineering graduation, and I was 19 when I came out of engineering college. And because of the language problem, and coming from a town where I have not seen big cities and all sorts of pomp and glory for this city, so I had a problem of accommodating to the city, and sort of introvert, an inherently introvert person would have another problem of even talking to people, and language being another large barrier. So I, from a topper in the classrooms who used to be in the front bench and a favorite of teachers, became the backbencher and finally got out of the classroom. It started to get supplies. I mean, a person who was topper was getting fail in exams. I wouldn't even know what is being written, and I wouldn't know what teacher is asking me because I didn't know what how to translate. So I think
you just dropped out of class. And then when you...
So somehow I learned that, this is 94, 95 I'm sharing this is, and that time the Silicon Valley was happening, it started to happen. The Jerry Yang and David Flo and Mark Andreessen were happening, and I got access to those magazines in Sunday Market where I read about Silicon Valley. So I thought that even if I don't get a job out of engineering college, what if I start an internet company? So in 96, 97, I actually had a college time internet company which was search engine and content management systems and so on.
Which you developed yourself?
Yeah, me and my friend together we did it, and then we sold it also. Way back in 99.
And that was when you were 17, 18 years old you started? Or?
Yeah, it was under 20. It all happened in teenage.
Not old like him. You were young.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, today I feel old for a change, because I think, that's right. In teenage, we were able to sell this company there.
Maybe we looking back, laughing about it, but it's tough to go through college when you don't understand what language is, and you know you could do it, but it's a big barrier.
I've learned that internet itself and overall media has brought a lot of knowledge about what college is and what kind of career graphs are there. When I was getting in my school, I did not know even of the Delhi College of Engineering existed at all, and how to appear at. In fact, I could get into DC because it was objective type questionnaire and not an IIT because it was narrated questionnaire, so I couldn't have written English exam. So I think this country is unfair to those who do not know English. I can fairly say that.
But there are a lot of people who will be watching this. Many people actually watch to try and improve their English, but they'll be listening to you and they'll feel heartened that it's not the...
I think today it sounds like as if it is my native. Earlier I used to translate, and over the period I learned how to speak, and it was stumbling block of many a times. And coming, another thing is that I think large cities have alpha people. and you get intimidated
Alpha
coming
people,
from
alpha males.
Yeah.
You said people, but actually generally males, right?
Yeah, I mean, no.
They're the most revolting.
Yeah, that's right. So I feel very privileged and proud that we could overcome, as some of us, and I think his story equally exciting. So,
but there must have been times when it was really struggle.
Yeah, in fact, I was not telling my parents that I'm now not able to cross my semesters.
You also didn't?
I had supplies. And when I still remember that everybody had completed their exam and I had 2 more exams left. And when I appeared at the exam, I literally kissed the college floor and said that please don't invite me back again in this college. I wish to get a job and I wish to do something good. But lucky thing was that I think I was born in the era when internet was early days in this country, right. And we were able to build something exciting. And once that blood of building something that you taste, I sold that company. I was out of that company in 11 months just to prove that I can build something next forward. And then the second company happened in my life. And now I think I wish that I built a 100-year-old company for the $100 billion there to build.
Kunal, you also, I mean, I remember talking to you about you stopped the pavements, going from restaurant to restaurant, getting coupons. I mean, you've paid your dues.
Yeah, I think of all the companies in India, most of the companies in India, we probably had the most jagged journey.
Yeah.
We had to change our business model 6 times.
1 step forward, 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back at least. Yeah.
I think it was sometime one step.
Like
1 step forward and 20 steps back also. And I think we probably had the most jagged journey of most of the large companies that are established now. Right. But those are also very character building. When we started, we were 23 and a half. Me and Rohit, my best friend from high school, with whom I started the company. Right. And we started as a coupon book business. We started as a publishing company. Right? Nothing to do. Absolutely nothing to do with what we do right now.
Antithesis, actually.
Yeah. And you know, I realized how sometimes life is not as fair as we generally are taught for it to be. I remember many times we would go to restaurants in Connaught Place, where if you go in as a guest, they'll treat you really nicely. The moment you have something you want from the manager, he'll say, go sit outside. Right? And we would often wait for 3-4 hours outside the restaurant in 42-degree Celsius weather just to meet with the restaurant manager.
But I think paying your dues.
Yeah, and those are very character building in retrospect. I don't think we saw those as negative experiences. I think we saw them very much as very humbling. It doesn't matter which college you went to. It doesn't matter
you have to
how
wait
good
4
you
hours,
speak.
you wait 4 hours.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what language you speak or how articulate you are. At the end of the day, if you're not creating value for the person you're meeting, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
Right, that's true. I must give you one example that I also waited many hours in many places, but in Xerox in California, I waited for 4 hours because the receptionist said, you want to meet the boss, he's going to walk through here in about 2-3 hours time. He walked through 4 hours later and I confronted him and said, look, I've got this. He said, I'll give you 10 seconds and to explain your idea, either you come up or you get out. Fortunately, he invited me up after that, but 10 seconds, you know.
So whenever someone we had no network, no contact, so we used to just do cold calls.
Yeah.
And one day Rohit would cold call. If someone won't pick up, then I would cold call. The third day we had something known as giving a standing ovation, which meant you just show up. And the person has to either enter the office or leave the office. You'll catch them then. I think similar to the story.
Similar. So, Nikesh, they've all had really rough, and I think a lot of kids watching will feel, chalo, they're going through rough times, but things can really happen. But you've always also said that family support or, you know, just the backing of a family is important. They did it for a while without telling their parents, but they always had that kind of, that's an Indian kind of.
But I think it's more about the, look, culturally, as you know, everybody said that he doesn't want to call his parents because the first thing the parents want to do is get you back on the next train. And I've told this story before. We have this huge cultural underpinning that this word, this concept called settle down.
Right.
You ask a parent, you meet someone and say, beta, tum to settle ho gaya, mere bachche ko bhi settle kara do, right? They all want to get your kids settled.
Settle down.
And settling down means get yourself a good job in a good company.
Right.
And then when you have a good job and a good salary, make sure you get yourself, rent a house and a car and find yourself a nice girl and get married. It works both ways. So that is how our cultural underpinning is there, because we come from a society which is resource constrained. Everybody aspires to actually settle down in society and have the basic trappings of for life.
We're a bit risk averse, the older
totally.
generation.
We get risk averse continuously. As we get older, we continue to get risk averse. So you and
No,
I
as
are
a
probably
country?
more risk averse than
Don't say
Nikesh
you
is.
and I. Look, there are 3 generations here, right? Me, you, and the.
And
But
there's a fourth one right there, Ritesh.
In fact, I think what I've seen in India is that when we got freedom, the first thing that Indians aspired was government jobs.
government, oh
Yeah.
God.
So I think in 70s it was about
I can
government
tell
jobs.
you, I used to be a professor at Delhi School of Economics, all youngsters like you, and I asked how many of you want to join the IS? 80%. I
80%.
said, are you crazy? It's walking dead. Oops, sorry, IS officers may be listening, but a lot of them will agree. It's like like World Bank job. It's a walking dead. But you're right. First is
First was
government.
government jobs, and then I think the privatization happened thanks to 1991 onwards. So people wanted jobs, and that is what Nikesh has now said, that get a job and settle. But I think 2010 onwards, the world has changed. The startup or the company's creation, entrepreneurship is mainstream. In 2004, when I was in the midst of my company and I hadn't raised money, going through the struggles of all kinds, including no food for a couple of days and so on and so forth. My mother
No
got
food for 2 days?
yeah,
Literally?
I used to pile on people, but
Right,
some
right.
certain days you can't pile on because they're
Yeah.
not at home. So now you are like ignored. I would have a cold drink and a biscuit and I'm done. And that's
Yeah.
like 10 rupee budget I lived on block. In fact, it's a very interesting thing that it took 2.5 years for me to learn that my car could take a fuel of 600 rupees because there was never enough money
20,
to put
30 rupees a time, and that was it.
one
Just to
liter
get to the next
Yes.
stop.
Bought yourself a car.
Actually, in fact, the beauty was this car was gifted by someone who said that now I think you should run in cars.
You
not
need a
in-
car.
Yes, that's right. So it was a quote unquote grand charity, if you will. Now, what I
My
love,
first car was gifted to me by my brother. Same thing, yeah. In tough
it was
times.
a friend actually for me, so it was nice of having such friends.
Yeah.
So now I remember that in 2005, my mother called me and said that I think you should leave this all, whatever you're trying, because a lot of people around me tell me that you didn't get a job, that's why you're doing your own business. So, and you should settle. And my
Settle
father
down.
will call, I think you should wind it up all and settle.
Settle
And
down,
my
yeah.
mother would say that you know. So I think now 2010 onwards, not many parents are saying that. So it's about 20 years each cycles. And after 20, I think
Now they are
2015
encouraging.
onwards, I don't think that people are bothered about it. It's
Well,
enough
fascinating.
mainstream.
I went to my undergraduate university, and I talked to a bunch of the graduating class, and they're all evaluating jobs at Oyo or Snapdeal or Paytm or Grofers, and they're talking to me about those companies, and they're no longer. When I graduated, it was half of my class was probably went to IAS, the other half was working at large behemoths like Tata Steel and Tisco and Wipro and HCL at that point in time.
Yeah, yeah,
Today, the culture is I want to work for a fast-paced company, and pretty
and
much
maybe get the experience and then start my own. A lot of them.
actually, a lot of them are going straight. They don't believe that experience is. We say if you get nothing, you get experience.
Yeah.
Right? So, so experience is overrated. I think.
But
all
some of
these
these, you must have been parents worried about, will you get married? Will
Yeah, I
you
think,
find
look,
job
traditionally the average age of entrepreneurship was like 35 plus.
Yeah.
That's when you became an entrepreneur
Right.
because our schooling system doesn't teach you maturity, etc. It takes you 10 years to become mature in our system, right? And I think
that's a different show. Right?
yeah, but you see most of the great entrepreneurs of India became entrepreneurs after the age of 35. Right, and I think that age is coming down very rapidly. It's down to late 20s when we started. Now it's early 20s. Now so many companies are starting while people are at IITs or other regional engineering colleges.
And India's young population, we have a demographic dividend, which the other Western countries are getting a little older.
Yeah.
The average age is much higher than ours, so that's a positive. But Nikesh has just told us how he assesses who to give money to. What would you say to somebody who's watching? How do you raise money? How does a young guy go to somebody like Nikesh? Or he'll be said no many times. He'll face a lot of tough questions. What does he do? How does he raise money?
I think first and foremost, you got to be convinced about what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think unless you are convinced about what you're doing, there is no way you're going to be able to explain
That's
it
very true.
to anyone who's semi-cerebral on the other side.
Yeah.
Semi-cerebral.
No, he didn't mean semi-cerebral.
Oftentimes you meet entrepreneurs, including when we started off, when we were very green, at how half-baked our own ideas how half-baked our own execution was.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you do that? And I think there has to be a very strong feedback loop in your thinking. Always create an ecosystem around yourself, around your company, of good well-wishers, advisors, people who are willing to give you 30 minutes once a month, and run them by what you're working on, how you're thinking about it. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs just need to hear themselves talk to realize what the solution is. But they oftentimes don't have someone cerebral to talk to.
That's very interesting. So first believe in what you're doing. That's crucial. Then keep testing it with mentors or friends who will tell you the truth. If it's rubbish, they'll tell you this not, I mean,
it's one data point, right? You may choose to ignore it.
You may choose to ignore it because a lot of people can be negative.
Yeah.
But
I think the third thing is, I believe quite strongly in this. Whatever you're doing, at least in your mind, it should create big impact. Because the starting point should be whatever I'm working on, whatever I'm going to dedicate the next 10 or 20 years of my life on, has to create mega impact on society, on country, on people around me. Only then will you be able to answer the questions about what is the market size, how big will this be. Start with impact, and then the mathematics can follow.
Not the spreadsheets first. Those are history, I think. Excel spreadsheets,
you see a lot of that as well. You see a lot of that as well. I think it's the package. You have to see the entrepreneur, you have to see the idea, you have to see the market they're addressing, and eventually it boils down. Look, there's a lot of startups in India, there's a lot of startups around the world, and there's lots of great ideas. The question is, who is going to be able to consistently execute? So I think, we were talking about this earlier, if 2015 was the year of funding and all the focus was raising money, how do you pitch yourself to VCs or late stage guys? I think India has moved rapidly in the last 1.5 years to a lot of companies getting funded, some companies getting too much funding, but I think 2016 is going to be all about execution.
So 2015 fundraising, funding, and 2016 execution.
I think in 2016 we're not going to see as much money go into the Indian startup scene as went in 2014 and 15. However, I think the good companies will execute, will distinguish themselves, and they will see more funding. I think some of the others will have to work harder to get funding, because the market is figured out, that you don't want growth at a cost which your company cannot bear, right? So I think there's this huge hubris, which is a global hubris, where everywhere you're saying, wait, if I can drive my top line, if I can drive my GMV, people are going to get excited about me, they'll see that my business is growing.
I should explain, GMV just means your
gross market value,
potential revenues that you could have got, the value of the product despite the discounts you're giving.
So GMV is if you sold 1,000 bottles, if each bottle is $1, $1,000.
Even if you sold it for a cent.
Yes, right. So that's the GMV. So I think 2014 and 15 around the world, we saw this huge trend where people saying, let's go sell more, because when we sell more, it's going to create some sort of a sense in the eyes of investors that, wow, these guys are able to sell these things, deliver these things to consumers, hence they must be worth more. But I think as it's becoming apparent, both to founders, to companies, to the market, is you don't want unprofitable growth. You don't want to buy something for $1 and give it away for 90 cents. We're a wonderful country. You stand at the street corner and say, here, you can have this for 90 cents. I just bought it for $1 from the store next door. The guy at the store is going to walk back and buy it back from you at 90 cents and put it back on the counter. So you have this virtuous or vicious cycle depending on which side you're on. So I think the market has figured that out. So I think 2016, it's going to be very important to see whether these companies which have raised these large amounts of funding are going to be able to execute, are going to be able to create the islands of profitability in their large systems. And if they can, they'll get funded more, they'll get the respect of the consumer, they'll get the respect of the industry, and they will actually end up being those 100-year companies which you talked about with $100 million market cap.
But the parameters of what people are looking at is going to be very different. No GMV anymore, it's more...
No, GMV is relevant because scale allows you to amortize your fixed costs and the cost of setting up the business. So it's relevant what you're selling. But what's also relevant is in that process of quote-unquote giving things away or giving them off at a discount, are you actually creating loyal customer bases? Right? I know that the Ola founder is not represented on stage, but I've been in India for the last 3 weeks. One night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I needed to get to the hospital. I don't have the luxury of having somebody downstairs. I don't have a car. So the first thing I do is pull out my phone and I get myself an Ola. 5 minutes later, there's a car outside my door.
Amazing.
I go to the hospital, I pay 156 rupees and I'm there. Now that's a life-changing experience because now I know whenever I need anybody to drive me at any time of the day or night,
It is life changing.
it's going to be there. And that is the sense that people are creating by creating these new companies, right? Whether it's a Snapdeal, I've ordered something, it shows up in my house 24 hours later. I don't have to go to a mall, park there, take an hour to get in, take an hour to get out, and come back home and say, oh, I couldn't find that thing there because
The other thing is you
didn't
get
have
so
it.
much more choice on it. Like you
Yes.
want to buy wine glasses. Like you go to a shop, you buy 5. You go to Snapdeal or any of the Amazon or
Yes.
Flipkart or any of them, and you'll see 50
you go
of
to
them.
Snapdeal.
Sorry, yeah, of course.
Well,
Unbiased.
over the last 4 days, I've been buying so much baby stuff. I
Yeah.
didn't even realize there was so much choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Congratulations.
choice is like what is phenomenal on these platforms. I just want to ask you, is there similarity, you know, this giving it a discount and spending a lot of money up front? I do remember when Pepsi, Coke, even Star TV came to India, they spent billions of dollars in marketing
Yes.
and they made huge losses, but they now have reaped it all back. Is that similar
Well, you
concept?
do, look, I think there are two things that you're
Getting
trying
a
to
market,
do.
actually.
There are two things you're trying to do. I think the gentlemen here are more than capable of explaining, and I'm sure they'll have their version of it. One, first and foremost, you're trying to create trial. You're trying to get people like me to get in a car at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
You're trying to get me to order on a Snapdeal. You're trying to get me to use a wallet. You're trying to
Just
get me to
try
stay
it,
in Oyo.
experience it.
You're creating trial.
Yes.
So what's very important when you create trial, that your customer is going to have a good experience.
Yeah.
Right? So we've talked about experience is your product right now.
Crucial.
Because there's no difference in a bottle of water that you buy from the store or you buy from Snapdeal. But the experience has to be something to say, okay, that wasn't bad, I liked it. I would do it again because it's convenient,
Yeah.
it's efficient, I don't have
It
to
works,
bother my head.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the first thing you do is you try to create trial, which is great. So creating trial, great idea. The second thing you try and do is you create long-term loyal customers. I think that's where a lot of 2016 is going to be about, is am I creating the trial in the right customer groups? Are these the people who are showing up the first time, showing up the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time?
So the parameter you look at is return customers?
You look at the quality of customers, right?
Right.
You want a great experience and you want high quality customers.
Right.
If you can do that, in the long term, it's going to work out. You get bad customers, great experience. Obviously, they're not paying you for the experience because they're bad customers. You get great customers, lousy experience, they're never going to come back.
Yeah.
So you want great experience and great
good
customers. I think that's the two things that the market has been trying to do.
And
by
this is the test year for that.
And I think 2015 has been one of those years where we've seen, I think in 2013 and 14, if we were sitting here, we would not understand ride sharing or car hailing, Ola or Uber. We say, okay, this is interesting, they're Western concepts. You would really not understand that e-commerce is relevant. Today, I think the collective size of e-commerce that is conducted between Flipkart, Snapdeal, and Amazon in India rivals some of the largest established bricks and mortar businesses in India.
Absolutely.
So actually they're at scale, right?
Yeah.
So they're competing at scale.
Fantastic.
So now, I think 2016, they've got to sharpen their knives and get their models right to make sure that you have the right quality customer, you are creating the right trial.
He's looking worried.
Oh,
So
An
just think of
entrepreneur
worry.
should always be worried.
Yeah, always be hungry and worried. Yeah, paranoid, isn't it? So again, just for the average guy watching, if they want to raise funds and you have to meet investors, potential investors, how should they go about it? I mean, from your experience, what are the key things? One, I think 3 points that Kunal made were excellent.
So I somehow have been the last guy to raise the money most of the times.
Last guy.
One of the time when I raised my Series A, one of the really sincere large VC said that, who's this guy? Everybody's got funded in this industry. I have no time for him. So I nearly met the gentleman in a hotel lobby when he was walking for breakfast, and that was the time that he allowed me to. Interestingly, he chased me for a deal later, and I had my kicks off saying, now that you're giving me deal, here is a deal back on you that there is no deal. well, the point was that I think my understanding is that you have to have a mature understanding of the market and your business context. You must know what you're doing, in which market you're doing,
Right.
and even if it is not precedented somewhere else, so
Right.
it's fine to be that.
Right.
Second is that I have always backed, and we as a company also invested quite a lot in companies that I don't bank on the destination of the bus. I bank on the driver of the bus. I think it's an entrepreneur, because companies will change the direction and companies will find the new business models over the period. And why should we bother about business model any which ways? Talk about Google. It used to be called search, and it is now Android, and it is something else altogether some days later. And talk about all the large companies, GE and so on and so forth. So if you immediately look at 100 years, you forget about business model first of all. So I've never been able to appreciate a pitch of a business model and vice versa.
So you can't stand people coming, here's my Excel sheet.
I actually say, what's your story? Why do you want to do it?
Yeah.
And what's inside?
What's your story?
What's your story? And give me a reason that why would you be at it when you go through the grunge and when you will be brushed against everything else. And when people have that story, I think that's a lasting impression, and that is what continues. So if everything is dark, can you continue? Because you have that strong commitment, sincerity, story, personality, aura, everything else.
So for you, a lot depends on the person that comes to you.
I think it's so. I think history books can tell that it's in the early days of any change, it's a leadership that matters, and over the period the systems walks in.
Okay.
So startups are meticulously about how they are led.
And to go to the next generation, Ritesh, was it tough learning experience, raising funding? How do you go about it? How would you advise a kid like you?
I think I'm still learning to advise, but I think
that's a bit early. Yes,
but I think in general, two things that I feel very strongly about in that specifically is one. So I didn't have either the degree of a college or friends whom I knew or colleagues whom I knew to come and work together with me. So effectively, when I started, one of the things that I realized was the first few guys I spoke to, almost everyone passed me. They were like, you've come to raise seed financing. Do you know what that means? I was like, no. So like, if you don't know, how do you come to raise money? So I told to myself,
seed, series 1, series A, series B.
I just read that on TechCrunch, right? NDTV won't talk about it 2 years back.
Exactly.
But I think back then, one of the things for me specifically was I had seen companies in India raise debts and build real companies. So I felt, I'm not going to raise this funding thing because nobody gives me money. I don't have a degree either. So I'm going to raise this business by raising debts. So that was one, that I never built the business to raise capital. I built the business to really build a business. And then, of course, at some point of time, the people who felt that raising money was fine for me started.
I didn't quite get that. Explain that a little more. That you
so
started off by
just building the company. I raised money from few friends and family.
Okay.
Gave them no equity. It was just debt, because I felt equity. I didn't even know what that meant, right? So I felt debt. So I said, I'll take this loan from you and I'll pay back to you in a year. I think as that happened, I realized that most of the people who started seeing us started respecting the impact that you were creating. And impact not from the perspective of large impact, that was like 10 lakh rupees that would create no impact at that scale. But I think one of the things that I feel very powerfully about is saying, you take a product in a really, really small market and be the big fish there instead of being the small fish in hundreds of small markets. And I think, for example, Facebook, right? They started from the Harvard dorm, but there were 90% users in Harvard. They were not all over Massachusetts. So I think for us, we said we'll only do it in South City 1. This is a place in Gurgaon. And we said this place, any consumer who comes, his choice to come in and stay should be Oyo. And once we started doing a lot of these things, we started seeing external folks started saying, guys, you're doing a good job. And it was of no size. It was just saying that these guys really want to build something and we believe could be the right guys to build that.
So in a way you're saying, set an example, show you can do it, do it properly, and then things will happen.
It's the way, if I was an investor, and again, I'm not yet one, and requires a lot more intelligence, I think. But I think in general, right, one of the things...
No, don't worry about that. You already said semi-cerebral guys. So the cerebral guys are the entrepreneurs, the semi-cerebral guys are the investors.
So I think at that point of time, my question is, have you been able to convince 10 more people to come work with you for me to be convinced to put my real dollar into your company? And if you've been able to convince 10 more people to leave their jobs to put their dollars instead of getting their salaries in your company by means of sweat or by cash, then possibly I'm more interested than I was in general.
And
I think Nikesh just talked about perfect example, which is the benchmark of any business. You have customers which are coming back, whether your cycle is shorter or longer. This is absolutely the most important test. Whether you are looking at a smaller geography to try it out, whether you have a very longer haul cycles. If you do not have customers coming back, you're actually not a business yet. I think that's the most important thing.
One of the things that's happening now, which is quite interesting, is that if you look at the graph of funding by traditional sources and crowdsourcing or kickstarting, they're actually going to be equal this year. What is this crowdsourcing? It sounds so exciting and so different. And does it worry you at all, or you welcome it?
No, I think it's a wonderful thing. Look, the reason we're new to the world of investing. The last year and a half, before which I had an operational job, SoftBank didn't have a large team. We've only been doing it for a year and a half, a lot in India and some overseas, in the US and in Tokyo. So I think what's happening is there's also a disruption happening in the investment business, right?
Okay.
The traditional model is you had to go chase people who'd give you 10 seconds or
Right.
you'd be chasing them in hotel lobbies because they were too busy and they were kingmakers.
Right.
Today you sit there and say, wait, I'm going to put my idea to a vote, and there are many smart people out there who can invest in any denomination because, obviously the simplest choice is to walk up to one guy and raise $10 million. But if you can walk up to 10 million people and raise $1 each, that gets you to the same outcome.
Right.
And the probability that I'm willing to give $1 is a lot higher than me giving $10 million. Right. So it depends on which stage you're in, what kind of product you are.
You just publicize your idea on the net.
Well, Kickstarter does a wonderful job. You show them a product, people will decide, they will vote with their fingers or their money and say, hey, I like this interesting idea, I'm going to give you $100. So even it's sort of grassroots investing, grassroots entrepreneurship. I think it does satisfy the proof of concept stage, right? In a proof of concept stage, whether it's Ritesh trying to convince 10 people to come work for him and try South City One, or it's Kunal trying his couponing business or his first iteration of e-commerce, or it's Vijay's early business of enterprise software and then converting that into sort of a consumer business. In the proof of concept stage, you don't need a lot of money, but you need conviction, you need execution, you need trial, so you can find different people who come in early and support you. But those people also have to do it from a portfolio perspective, right? If I'm going to do crowdsourcing or kickstarting, I'm going to put $1,000 in 50 companies,
Right.
because I know half of them will not see light of day.
Right.
The remaining half, even half of those will stumble at some point in time. So you're lucky if you find 3-4, which actually in the future become a Paytm
Crowdsourcing
or
hasn't
OYO.
quite come to India yet, right? This huge surge is mostly in America.
I think we have to wait for sourcing in India first, then crowdsourcing. It's interesting. I think one of these guys was making an observation earlier. There's more conviction by investors who are not in India in Indian companies today than there is from Indian investors. So we have to get over that intellectual hump, where we have to see the entrepreneurs of India of the past and the promoters of India actually say, wow, this is a new wave, this is a new industry, we need to support this industry. Right. So you notice that a lot of the funding that has happened in India has happened actually by SoftBank or Tiger or DST or other people from the outside. And I think there are, of course, venture capitalists represented in India, but a lot of them are from Silicon Valley, whether it's a Sequoia or an Axel, they're all venture companies in the Valley. So there are a few Indian venture capitalists who have been great, very active in investing in many of these companies, but we need to see more of that. We need to see more support from the Indian ecosystem. I think the Indian ecosystem is off to a very good start, but for it to actually
the youngsters are off to a good start, but there's no backup by investors yet.
But
as you said, they're outside investors.
There are good signs. I mean, if I think the Honorable Prime Minister is going to do an event in the recent future around easing up policies around startup India and to ease of business.
Right.
There's a whole groundswell of VCs and other people investing in startups, and all of these guys who are effectively role models, like people come to Kunal or Vijay or hopefully soon to Ritesh, they're also, they're all busy asking people what's your story, so they're also actually acting as accelerators in the market and saying, not only will I mentor these people, I will also invest in new entrepreneurs to help them start different ideas and different things. So
even you find Ratan Tata does and a few others are doing, but we need more of that, I guess.
Yes, we need a lot more of that.
So
I think the more important part is we also need acceptance of failure. So I think you'll notice in 2016 that a lot of these ideas, some of them, like you said, are not going to work. And part of the Silicon Valley culture is not just funding venture capitalist ecosystem, but it's also that idea when you stumble and fall, two people will stand you up, pick you up, and say, okay, all right, go run again, because you're going to get...
change it, go ahead.
Right.
But
so
don't say, your history.
So I think that is a
You're
role.
never history.
That is a role which we have to take seriously, and I think one of the things you guys are going to have to do in the media, because Indian media is, at least my experience whenever I visit,
don't say anything
reasonably
let's
sensationalist.
Just censor that bit, okay?
But I think you have a sensationalist. You have a responsibility. You build people up quickly and you cut them down quickly. So you've got to be careful, because when entrepreneurs are bound to do something which they have to reinvent or pivot or redo differently. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very important that the media not slay them down, because whatever people say, they still go out and read what is written about them, and they say, oh my God, I failed. And then you get the phone call from your dad, Beta, settle down.
In fact, I was going to talk about the crowdfunding bit there. One of the incredible Indian businessmen, Dhirubhai Ambani, actually didn't get any private investors. He crowdfunded his company
From his
in
friends
public
and-
sense.
Oh, yeah.
So he actually
Right,
said it
right,
that I
right,
couldn't
yeah.
get money from people, so I'm going to go public and raise money.
I guess an IPO is like a
It's a
crowdfunding.
crowdfunding of the business. And now the Angel List, etc., are the equal syndication. They are private syndications, if not public
Right,
syndications. And I think I had an opportunity to go roadshow in India on a public listing attempt that we had done in 2010. And one of the learning that I have had is that Indian investors, which are Indian money, if you will, are not yet used to of technology-led businesses. They have not seen models like that, and they look at them in the same eye which traditional businesses are looked at, and that's exactly the mix that happens. So that is why the international investors have to do it.
So first, the understanding has to reach a particular level.
And if you see those who are investor pro in,
Good point.
they are not even doing in tech investments any which ways.
Right.
That is why there are so less listed companies.
But that'll change, because how did it change in the US if you reflect back?
Yes.
As millions of people who were in the investing business became customers of these companies, they realized, wow, this makes my life easy.
Yes.
That actually was the big turning point in the US, where suddenly more like haloed institutions like BlackRock and the Blackstones and the Fidelities jumped in. Earlier, they would only invest in like steel plants and manufacturing companies. But the fund managers and their families and their children started buying half their household goods online.
This is working, yeah.
That's exactly what is happening
But
right
tell
now.
me something which Nikesh had mentioned, that this is the year of execution. Now, and it applies to all you youngsters equally, that you're in an area with a lot of competition. And the barriers to entry in these businesses are not that tough. Of course, marketing is huge marketing spend. So this year, how do all of you distinguish your product? Because many of us, frankly, go through all the sites, see the cheapest, buy it. How do you get customer loyalty? That I want to come back to Snapdeal because there's something a little bit extra there.
So, excellent question. I mean, this is what we spend a lot of our time doing. Our view is that in the long term, unless you've built capabilities, like hard asset capabilities that deliver predictable customer experiences one after the other, where the customer just does not have to worry that whether I order one time or 100 times, it's going to be a consistent experience on promise.
Right.
That's the key. In the long term, consistency is the differentiator. Why did McDonald's become so successful globally versus any great fine dining restaurant? Because anywhere you walk into a McDonald's in the world, that burger tastes the same.
Yeah.
And that's going to be what will differentiate companies here as well. That said, there are a lot of innovations that we can do around technology, making deliveries faster. There are many things we can do, and all the companies are doing innovations in their own way.
Making your site sticky, that people want to keep going back to that site. That there are certain things, when I go to Snapdeal, I find, they give me a lot of suggestions which they seem to have researched me, and I enjoy that experience. So there's going to be a lot of technological improvements in that as well to make people come back to your site, right?
I think those are also hygiene at some level. Everyone will figure out the best algorithms to recommend.
Then they copy each other, and
But
that'll get around.
to your point of what is differentiation, how does the nth player not come into the space and create more clutter, is because creating hard asset capabilities can't be done overnight. That takes quarters and years of hard work, network design, and lots of investments.
Right.
And it's not just marketing.
Not just marketing. Are you worried that others will come in, they've seen you successful, and they'll spend millions or billions of dollars, and how will you distinguish yourself from others?
Yeah, I think great question. I think like Kunal said, and I think it's not mere coincidence that we think similarly in some of those things. I think we also strongly believe that consumer experience is going to play a very important role. But more importantly, I think in businesses like ours, it's very important for entrepreneurs to realize that at the pace in which companies change, our quarters, our months, and so on and so forth. So you have to remember that if there is one company that will disrupt your company, that has to be yourself and not anyone else. And for you to continue doing that, it's very important to imagine what the consumer really wants. If the consumer wants the hard asset, last mile customer experience, go do it. And if the consumer doesn't want that, just be off the touch, right? So I think these are going to be two very important things. One, predictability of experience. Second, making sure giving the user what he wants by ensuring innovation. And I think I'll give you a very anecdotal example of that. For example, you mentioned pricing being a very clear priority where the consumer goes and tries to find the best price. It is not as if you can't deliver the best product at the best price, which could be the cheapest, by the way, and still not make money. Because if you are the person who drives 90% business to the merchant, he's going to say it's okay to make a little less money, because in the hospitality business, we have a metric called RevPAR instead of just the average price, which is a factor of occupancy as well. Which means if you increase the occupancy by 40%, it's okay to decrease the price by 15 more percent.
Right.
So the sense is, if you're able to do both of these things, you of course naturally remain distinguished. And more than both.
Just one more thing, if responding to a bad experience, somebody's had you need that feedback, and you need to, because that'll keep, otherwise word of mouth in India, by the way, is huge, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think what we've realized is, at least in our experience at Toyo, we have a significant set of repeating users, but we have 3 to 4% users who had an unhappy experience and we feel genuinely very bad about it.
Right.
But those are the ones who make the highest amount of noise. And it's our responsibility as a company to make sure that those 3 to 4% users are treated and made sure that they actually feel very happy coming back again.
Right.
So
3 to 4% is not bad, actually.
Again, this percentages can differentiate by day, by hours, but what I mean is it's a minority in comparison, but that doesn't mean that minority is not your user. Each one is your user.
And also they make a lot of noise.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I think other than this, of course, passion differentiates. I think we feel I don't know to feel happy or unhappy about it, but we've been emulated across 23 countries in the last 6 to 7 months. It's almost like a reverse, right, where people used to say, we'll build something very similar of the US in India, and now there's something here which is being created in Europe, in Southeast Asia, and so on.
I just read you've gone to Malaysia.
Yeah, we're doing, we just launched something there. I think 3 competitors left the country by now. It just feels so random. But anyway, I think more importantly, I think it's more to do with people realizing that Nikesh has partnered us, but I think more importantly, I think
you're really
needle mover.
I want to jump in here. I think not to disrupt the flow of conversation.
No, please.
I think one of the things which it's very important. We're very early in the milestones of startups in India, and I think something which Nikesh said and Kunal said is we're going to have to. These founders have to keep innovating. This is not the end of the customer experience. So, when I was at Google. And all of us have this experience.
I was going to ask you about Google. I mean, like, it had hundreds of competitors. How did it
but I think,
distinguish itself?
In the early days as consumers, when you did a search, you found something, you're very happy you found something on the first page or the second page, right? You'd click to the second and third page. Today, nobody goes to the second page. People expect the first result to be the answer. So as you start providing experiences, the customer behavior and expectations change. It's okay, I get this, everybody gets this, this is the new bar. What's the next thing you're going to give me? So I think part of the paranoia you alluded to earlier, or the constant innovation, is the only way we're going to create these 100-year companies and this notion of keep disrupting yourself, or this notion of constantly innovating and building infrastructure, is that the needs of consumers will change. We'll get used to a different bar every time these companies create. And if you don't step up and disrupt yourself and step up to the next bar in the next 12 months, somebody else is going to come from the side and disrupt you, which, by the way, is a very important lesson for these people on stage, because their job is to make sure they don't get disrupted. But it's also a great message to everybody out there saying even these guys would get disrupted if they don't stay on top of their game.
So there's always, so is a customer in a way slightly ahead of the sites, because they know what they want, which site, and they find it somewhere, they'll go there. So you got to keep up with the, I mean, I'm used to I'm getting on the first page now, I want on the first line,
Well, good news is what drives us as society is this constant aspiration for more. We're never satisfied, because the day you're satisfied, you're dead. Right. So we as consumers, as human beings, we're never satisfied. We're always aspiring for more, and I think that's the way to describe our consumers. They always want the next thing from us as soon as
they get used to and take for granted existing latest technologies in no time.
Of course.
You got a lot of pressure on you. How are you going to distinguish yourself? Because again, globally and even in India, there are going to be a lot of people who want to get into this.
So If you look at payment business of ours, it has two kinds of competition. One is the traditional financial institutions,
Right.
and with them it's a very interesting race. It's a race problem where two things are racing together, and one has to cross other. So I believe that the time that a financial institution will take to understand technology is more than enough for us to understand the financial business. So I think it's happened in every industry whatsoever in the world. Whenever tech has crossed with any vertical, that vertical has learned less. It took a lot of time to understand what technology was able to do it. So I think that's a little less concerning if I was to choose one over other. But it is a regulated environment, so there is a lot of regulatory challenge that we can have. And then there are all other equivalent peers of ours who are technology companies and in this business. And for them, I think it's a race of a network effect. You need a large number of consumers, large number of merchants. So I think there we win by the network effect.
Network effect, right. So something about which you said earlier, which is actually very, very important for us to have an Alibaba or is ease of doing business in India. It's tough doing internet startups in India. There are so many regulations.
Startups in India.
It's not a full stop.
Exactly.
Anything in India.
No, that's fair. Hey, starting up a business requires you to go through a lot of effort.
A lot of effort. And even running it, there are all kinds of regulations. One or two things you'd like to see changed to make ease of business. Like PM is sitting in front of you, what would you give? You probably already told him, but...
And I think, I'm very hopeful to listen to what the government comes out with on the 16th of January. I've heard there's a big event around easing the way business is done in India. I think most fundamentally, we've got, look, it's kind of like this. The traditional world was designed from a bricks and mortar perspective. Right? Now the new world is a technology perspective which has no barriers, no boundaries. All the data is up in the cloud. Now, the world was never envisaged this way. So a lot of our rules, a lot of our policies are set up from a geographical constraint perspective, from local taxes to global taxes to industry-specific stuff, and all that stuff. There's no role of aggregators in the past, right? There was no OYO pulling together hospitality things. So how do you tax them? Do you tax them once? Do you tax them twice? Who do you hold accountable? There were no marketplaces. How do you do that? Who do you hold accountable? As Vijay mentioned, there's so many regulations around financial processes. You've got to figure out.
It's really for the old bricks and mortar world.
So one of the interesting challenges, and I've told this story before, but I think be very relevant here in this context, is that when I moved to the US 25 years ago, I got there, I assimilated reasonably well. I went to school there, and I've done business there for 25 years.
You've got Siddharth blood.
But I think one thing which I found really hard to integrate was into US sport. Right? I still, my juices still get going by cricket. I still wake up in the middle of the night, watch cricket, and watching cricket and watching all the sports. So you realize that at some level, as much as I tried to adapt, I was still an immigrant, and I'm not a native. Right? Now, if you play that analogy forward and say, this new world of the internet, you and I are still immigrants. Ritesh and Kunal and Vijay are the natives. Now the problem is...
I'm really glad you keep mentioning us
yes,
together, but I want to
but
explain a few things.
Yeah, let me say, the problem is, whatever is going to happen is the regulation for the country is going to be written by the immigrants for the natives.
Right.
And
immigrants are going to write for the natives.
Yeah, because look, we're all learning the internet after our kids are learning it, or some people's grandkids are learning it, but the people sitting and writing the rules are the people whose kids are telling them, their grandkids are telling them. And it's very hard for us to write the rules for a world which is say, oh my God, it's never going to work like that. I mean, remember, we all sit and talk about our parents, say, oh my God, our parents would never have written the rules this way because they never understood this world. So my fear is that this is not just an India-specific problem, this is a global problem. We have immigrants writing the rules for natives. So my request to the Prime Minister or anybody in government is, try and think about life from the perspective of your kids, because that's what you're trying to create.
All the guys who are writing it should first realize they're immigrants. They don't even think they know they're immigrants.
No, they're in power, hence they are the decision makers, hence they are the ones who will tell us how to get things done.
That's a good point. They should get the natives to write for native applications.
But what is encouraging is that this government is definitely very welcoming for inputs, for suggestions, for criticism as well, on an ongoing basis, and it's not just lip speak, which is very encouraging. You feel that your voice is being heard. Last year was the first time, startups were invited for pre-budget hearings, pre-budget discussions.
That is
right. It's quite a watershed moment if you think about it. So I think that's going to continue.
Slight similarity. When I first started election forecasting, I went on Doordarshan with a panel of the existing old school, and I went on for an hour, and about 45 minutes I said, "Acha, let's listen to these guys also." You know, like this native. 2 minutes we were given, and out.
Yeah.
Because it was a different world of
No, I think sometimes the
econometrics.
feeling is when you grow up, you'll figure it out and you'll adapt to how it works.
Exactly.
And part of what is hard to understand is that these guys are changing the world. The world is never going to look like it used to look in the past.
Exactly.
The question is we can facilitate it by thinking ahead and saying what kind of a world we want our kids to live in.
Right. But as a native, what would you like to see one change? Because you do have, every business has competitors. You have bricks and mortar people who are threatened by you, who have political, they have votes, they have clout.
I think there needs to be a lot of the rules, as Nikesh was saying, were written in the 1940s and 50s still, and revised and upgraded over a period of time, but still very much for a different India.
For example, this single brand, and you can't have a warehouse if you're a
it's just
retail. It's just crazy.
The list is long.
How can we be Alibaba if we're going to, or any of these Chinese huge success stories?
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon, exactly.
I think the first and foremost, there needs to be a clear understanding within the government that this tidal wave is here to stay.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away just because you make it harder.
Right.
Because tens of millions of Indians are already part of this phenomenon.
Right.
Suddenly they are not going to say, okay, we're going to stop shopping online.
Exactly.
Because you made it harder for the companies to run.
Right.
Secondly, I think specifically is around having a single window clearance for any query, confusion, doubt around how to interpret regulation. We're not saying change it.
Right.
We're saying clarify it. Listen to us.
But again, it'll be an immigrant listening.
But I think within the immigrants, there are those
Some who are a little bit
have learned the
receptive.
language of natives.
And they're a little receptive.
Yeah.
Right. But we know what America did to its natives originally.
Okay, the analogy only works so far for us. Just stop while you're ahead.
I just love it.
Stop while you're ahead.
I actually have one request there, and it is because although government has allowed Indian companies to list in India as first preference and then only go overseas, which is kind of little awkward because people have tried creating international holding companies so that they can go list internationally.
Right.
Even though the listing rules are a little tough in India and internationally they are not, they are far more easy. But ultimately, Indian government should allow technology companies, especially or overall any startup or any company, to raise international money without even restricting that you have to first list in India. I think that's totally odd because we can bring at least foreign capital in India, if not help some stock market here.
And that's the kind of investment you want rather than...
It's a type of investor you get there.
Right.
Is a little different valued versus you get in India.
Do you find restrictions and difficulties in your ease of doing business here?
I think, this is natural to assume, like you said, for the reason of immigrants trying to hear natives. But I think, in general, two specific...
I didn't say, he said.
But
I love it. Yeah.
In general, two specific things. I think one thing is, in general, a lot of agencies, and I think I second Kunal in terms of this government being very receptive, having multiple conversations across the board. But more specifically, we have to be started, people should start seeing us as a part of solution instead of as a part of the problem. And I think that is extremely important, right? Because, when people start seeing us, they start counting the number of problems. But when you see the other side of the solution, which means earlier you never knew who got into a guest house which was unbranded. You didn't know where he was booking from. You didn't know what was the name of the person. You didn't know what was the phone number. You didn't know what was the circle of the operator, and so on and so forth.
Right.
It's also a part of the solution. So it's very important to understand that as you're solving for it. And second, for us more specifically, which is for our industry, it is a terror to start a hotel of yourself, which is new. I mean, in some states, then this is state specific, there are Sarai acts in place, and you know what that means, right? Like, you need to call the local panchayat to be able to take their approval, and some places panchayats don't exist anymore, so you are in a soup to figure out how do I start the hotel now.
First you have to create a panchayat and then get their approval and then disband the panchayat.
That's ease of doing business. First create a panchayat, no problem.
So these are things that are hygiene, like Kunal said, which are, because laws were created 20, 30 years ago. Right. And if two of these things happen, I think we have a brilliant time ahead of us.
Yeah, it just feels that also you guys, natives, need to write down 5 points each and say, this is what we need. And
No, I think
and hope that people are receptive.
also I think the associations are now taking a relatively more proactive role as well.
Is
like
NASCOM involved?
NASCOM,
It is, okay.
Yeah.
very proactive role, which is always good because they build credibility with the government and government machinery over the last 20 years. And when they say, hey, we are putting our weight behind this industry is here to stay, here is the positive impact it's having on society and country and economy, but let's make it easy for them. Let's get more entrepreneurs in the country rather than more policy, because that's what India needs to succeed.
Right. I mean, you were talking about we need scale and we need to build this up, and we're at very early stage right now. We're $15 billion companies. We need to hit 100, 150. I mean, China has got $200 billion companies. Is that going to happen here?
I think for sure. Look, if you look at some of the businesses that you're seeing today, the financial business is a huge space, right? You got banks. The country is underbanked. There are people who don't have access to, you know, if suddenly the government is giving bank accounts to people. We're teaching people how to manage their money. You're trying to take leakage and inefficiency out of the system. You're trying to expand.
The government's quite keen on that.
Yes, and I think that's going to create a huge opportunity and revolution in the financial space.
Right.
If you look at the hospitality industry, right, the largest hotel group in India, I think Oyo has crossed the number of rooms that they manage
By a factor of 3.
by a factor of 3.
Only 3, my God. They're
But
the
I mean-
largest hotel group.
Yes,
God
they've
bless you, that's
managed to do that
fantastic.
in a span of a few years. So you're sitting there saying, how big is this opportunity, right? You know, we've got 1 billion plus people. They need to find a trusted place and a safe place to be able to stay at a reasonable price. If you look at commerce, and I won't call it e-commerce because I think it's commerce. It's the future of commerce. Today, starting a hotel is hard, and starting a store is hard too. You got to go find yourself real estate. The cost of real estate usually is 12 to 18% on your P&L. Right. When you start a store, you have to have inventory in the store. Today, you can actually be the lady from Surat with your saris and go list. You don't have to need all the
And what's
infrastructure.
worse, he's not even allowed inventory.
Well, that's even better. You know, sometimes it's not a bug; it's a feature. It's not a bug; it's a feature. So I think
So
from
I
that
ask,
perspective,
this is not. I just have one more question after this, but the topic of is it a bubble? The kind of valuations you were getting, is it going to be 2000 again, like we had the huge bubble of software in the late 90s and that crashed? Is this a bubble that bad, or is it we learned from that, or?
well, I'll tell you what, and this is obviously my perspective on this, is a lot of the businesses that are being created in India are real. So does that mean in the future, 10 years from now, are we going to be discovering hotels, hotel rooms through a company like Oyo? Are we going to be using some sort of cashless transaction mechanism that works off my mobile phone? Am I going to have financial profiling and the ability to borrow money and exchange money through digital means? Yes. Am I going to buy things in the most efficient way where things get delivered to my house, whether it's groceries, whether it's goods and
As he
services?
says, they're here
Yes.
to stay.
So these businesses
These
are
are-
here to stay.
yeah.
We're effectively going to transform the way consumers accept these services, or are we going to get a cab to show up at 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning and not have legions of drivers waiting for us endlessly in cars parked, running idle for hours?
Right.
Yes, so we are going to create fundamental consumer behavior change. So there's a big
That's
tick
happening.
on that.
Right.
Now the question is, what is the price to create these businesses? How fast can we create them? And what is the right price that you pay for them today if you believe they're going to exist tomorrow? And are these the ones going to exist, or somebody's going to disrupt them? That's where the valuation question comes in, right? What am I paying for it? How am I paying
So
for
it's
it?
going to be there, but is it this particular lot or
So the
another
question is,
particular lot?
if let's play the movie the other way around. If in 10 years from now there's going to be a $50 billion company, or $100 billion company, or a $20 billion company, who are they going to be? If you believe they're going to be in these spaces, somebody's going to be there.
Yeah.
For that, if you have to pay 2, 3, 4 billion today, maybe they're not worth 2, 3, 4 billion today, but they'll be worth 10 or 20 or 50, then I want to be in them, and then it's a demand and supply thing.
Right.
I can't buy it for less than that because that's what it's selling for.
If I'm understanding you, saying
Yes.
it's not a bubble in terms of the amount of money, individual companies in it, of course not these three. These three are here forever.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
But
But,
I think-
some individuals may come and go, but the
Look, in
concept will be
2016,
here.
some startups will shut down.
of course.
In 2016, some startups will not get funded.
Yeah.
They won't get funded not because of lack of money. They won't get funded because of lack of execution. They won't get funded because they picked the wrong market. they won't get funded because they pivoted the wrong direction when they should have pivoted in a different direction. But that's the risk of creating startups. You know, there is no entrepreneurial opportunity without risk.
Right.
If the risk was zero, we should all be doing only that. There is risk associated with, and there's many decision points people like Kunal, Ritesh, Vijay are going to have to make, and all the other entrepreneurs out there. And the question is, the choices they make at those points in time, the people they talk to, they bounce ideas off, the decisions they make, that's going to determine if they're going to be around in 2017, bigger, stronger, and wiser, or if they will have a little bit of a stumble and they're going to have to be propped up and say, okay, go run again.
You're going to prop them up?
Of course. Look, we're investing.
That's good news for you.
We're investing in people.
But tell me, are you a bit worried? Bubble or not bubble?
You know, as I said in the big opening comments, we've had such a jagged journey. We're pretty battle ready and, and battle scarred, and in a very, very positive way, because it makes you fearless yet paranoid at the same time, where failure doesn't bother you, but what bothers you is, are you on the right track or not? And if you're not, it's very important to be objective and honest with yourself and keep changing your direction along the way. You can't just continue on the wrong path knowing that you're on a wrong path. I think that's just suicide.
So I'm going to ask you a question which I asked Zuckerberg about 5-7 years ago. He was worth 5 billion. I said, look, 5 billion, why do you want anything else? Why don't you sell? It was at Davos. And he said, no, I'm not even started. I would say, you could be a billion, you could go on yachts, you could go on holidays, families, generations are done. Why don't you just...
I think everyone...
you're not listening to this.
I think everyone has different motivations.
Right.
I feel we all have one life to live.
Yeah.
Right, all of us.
Yeah.
Different number of years, but one life to live.
Correct.
And in that one life, what do you want to be doing that creates maximum impact? Right? And
this is the aspect. There is a mission aspect to it. It's not just the financial, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, there was an interesting
It's that sari woman, housewife who makes saris. That makes you... That's impact, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there was an interesting Chinese saying 2 years ago, which I read, which had profound impact on me. The whole point of life is happiness. Everyone's chasing happiness at the end of the day. And the saying went as follows, that if you want happiness for an hour, go fishing. If you want happiness for a day, go to sleep. If you want happiness for a year, get an inheritance. If you want happiness for a lifetime, do something meaningful for others. And I think I've reminded myself of that over the years, and I've realized every time we see a successful seller story, we realize that we are creating true impact, and it redoubles our efforts to come in and give 150% every day.
And Vijay, I find the same thing in you. This kind of, there is bigger than just making a profit, and you want to have an impact and change things in India.
I lived my life with no corruption whatsoever there. I really felt bad when I see people doing misdeeds with cash. If in my lifetime we can reduce cash to 20% of what it is today, I think a life will be worth. This country will become a better place because Paytm will exist. And I can take a bet on this today. I can take a bet on this on 10 years. I can take a bet on this for 50 years.
It's a huge change.
And I can tell you this,
cash in a society.
It won't matter whether there is an investor, whether there is a supporter or a regulator or a restriction. This is a fight to put an infrastructure of financial services in this country. I paid 40% of 197 equity for 8 lakh rupees of investment at a time in my life. People have been taken for a ride far more than we know of the stories in these large cities. We have to change that in this country, and we will change it, and that's the story that we are at. I don't think it would be a life worth living if we couldn't have done some of those things.
But this is a different kind of natives. We're listening to natives who are teaching. You're also a native, by the way. So come on.
Google,
he keeps like, switching back.
The guy who made $60 billion a year for Google says that I'm an immigrant. though he said himself as an immigrant of US, not as for this world. He's definitely the native.
I have mainly in sports.
I have one opinion on the bubble thing that you're talking about. I think so I was part of the 1998-2000 journey too, and this is the equally, this is far more euphoric, by the way. Now, what I saw in that time was there were companies which were betting that this will go online. and maybe that should have a not, but it didn't go online. For example, like the best stories are pet shops and those I think there was a web and there was a grocery shop on those days, which was these were the last edge of the stories, and now this is going to go shoot. Right. But today, like Nikesh said, every business that you're talking about is a fundamental going to exist and is going to exist business. Those days, the consumer didn't exist as much needed to sustain was. Today, thanks to the smartphone and mobile internet, there are hundreds of million consumers. Right. So today's businesses are far more sustainable. Right. Whether they burn themselves through the lot of cash burns thanks to the discounting or something is a separate part. Right. But these businesses are sustainable. These businesses are going to exist. Right. You cannot take a Uber off the road or a Ola off the road anymore.
They've
in the world. This is going to exist, and so on and so forth for every other business out there.
That is a big difference, actually.
So I think this is a bubble. Somebody, if he gets a down round, you say bubble has been done. This is the excitement of bubble. This is for those naysayers, I think. Okay, Ola, we won, we predicted that there is a down round. But I think down round is not the end of the story any which ways. Maybe there are higher rounds, maybe there are lower rounds. But the companies are not going to go for sure, I can take a bet. Right.
So, $1 billion. Go and enjoy yourself on Bahama beaches, no?
In Oyo rooms.
Yeah, I know.
Make a Oyo in Bahama beaches. You have a work-life balance.
No, I think for me, this was 3-4 years back, right? And for me, I'd never seen a lakh in a bank account because it's my first job, right? So that was the first time I saw a few lakhs, and a small travel company came and we said we wanted to buy you, and they said they'll give us crores. So I was, that night I couldn't sleep. I felt 1 crore rupees. I mean, that's like a big deal, right? Yeah. But then I asked to myself that if I get that 1 crore rupees, what do I do next? I definitely won't go to college. And then I felt I'll start a new company. And then I asked, which sector will I start the company? I asked, I'll do hospitality because there are this millions of users I want to cater. Then I felt what I have is good enough. So I think at a lot of levels, when I think about that, I feel I'll not be able to do anything and I'll be jobless. So I feel that I'll have a very boring life if I'm not doing what
jobless
more an existential crisis. At the age of 22, that was worried about. Okay.
I think
suffering.
This is the Mark Zuckerberg rejecting Yahoo movement. That is happening.
There's 1 crore rupees. I don't think Yahoo, but
that's fine. There was $1 billion. There's 1 crore.
And I think more importantly, right? I think through my childhood, I grew up when I used to travel in, general trains, and then you'd be taken to your relatives' houses whom you had absolutely no idea of. They would, and this is what all of us have grown.
They won't give you the remote.
Yeah, they won't give you the remote. Like it's a very painful. And then we surveyed as well, right? We surveyed that majority of people in India stay with relatives, 12 times more than the number of people who stay at hotels. 70% don't like to go and stay at others' houses. 80% don't like others to come. And one of the major reasons, in India specifically, is you also have to give shagan. So people say, if I'm going to spend $40, I might as well stay at a good place in the right location, right experience.
That's a good transaction.
There you go.
But the reason
is to price below the shagan.
But the reason is there is no predictability, right? That you can't trust where you're going to go and stay. So my belief is, if these number of people, 400 million, which is significantly more than the population of America, who get into trains and can't book a trailway seat for the next 3 months to come, can get a decent place to stay, I would have solved a really, really big problem. And I think that is a much bigger realization to yourself, saying that you've done a good job, than going to Bahamas, because nobody would know.
In case you don't know, Oyo is on your own actually. That is how I know in another show on NDTV. Okay. And the story was that you don't get to get the remote. So now you're on your own and you get the remote.
The remote, that's the key part.
That's the story part. Yeah. What's the story?
Just to end, just some anecdotes, if you can remember some funny things that Nikesh told you, that you're a nutcase or something, he saw the truth.
I'll leave that for our private discussions, but I think I remember in the early days our first office was in the basement of Kirti Nagar Furniture Market in Delhi, and it was a 350 square foot basically basement of a home. And anytime we had to recruit someone, my sister-in-law, who would be sitting at home, would act as the HR manager and call the person to sound more, professional. And they would tell them, take a left from the Dharam Kanta, take a left from the Black Gate. there's a blue house on the right, not that one. Go next, there's a press wala sitting there, take the staircase from there and press the button, and either Rohit or I would open the door.
And then
right? And almost 8 out of 10 guys who got till the bell saw, what is this? And they just left.
pushed off. So I want people who are starting up to hear that, the garage mentality. That's where you have to start low cost, motivated. Don't start with plush offices. You look for that.
And don't apologize for it, right? I mean, there's nothing to...
If they don't want it, you don't want those guys, right?
Yeah.
Any fun stories in your long working life? Illustrious.
I'm not sure, but I think I've shared a lot of those, and you shared a lot of those. But I think in general, I remember the first recruit, first real recruit, to be honest, was this guy who was an IT BHU guy. Nikesh has seen him a couple of times at office, and he saw somewhere that there was an Oravel. It used to be the company is called Oravel Stays Private Limited. So he saw it somewhere, and he called up saying that I want to work. And there were only 2 people, I and there was one more guy whom I recruited as an intern for that month to pick up phone calls. So he called in and said, "Can I talk to the chairman's office?"
Oh my.
So he said, "I don't know who the chairman is, but Ritesh is right beside." So
He said, "This is the place I want to work."
And he told that he wants to come and work, and I felt all of this guys should be really expensive. So I had a great conversation with him for 2 hours, but then I told, "Look, you sound great, but you know what? I can't afford you." So he called me for literally 15 days back to back before he showed up, saying that, "You know what? I'm going to pay you to work here." Which is where I realized that people actually are willing to work for you regardless of what it takes. And I think just an extension to what Kunal was mentioning, that you will find people who are extremely passionate and can see the journey that you see, and if required, wait for them.
Right. So choosing the right kind of people is also very important at this stage, right? I mean, I just met the head of Tabola, who's hired a guy who used to fly F-16s and was expert in cheese making. And he now runs the international business. It's just any weird... You must have hundreds of weird stories.
Actually, so a lot of those. So I'll share quickly two of them. First was about an office address and the fax and the phone number. So in early days, we used to have mobile phones, and we had mobile phones. Now, you're not identified as a company till the time you have a landline phone. And it was tricky for us to get a landline phone. So I spotted on internet some way to get a virtual phone. And then the phone number was actually a voicemail source. You drop a voicemail, it comes in an email, and then you listen to who called. Now the problem was that you don't have a fax number. And the same number could have captured the fax. So I took 2 virtual landline number and a fax number to look separate and different in those early days, so that people take us seriously.
My God, how things have changed.
And this is Airtel office that we used to go, and they had this fantastic coffee machine, and like 10 people company, what would it afford? So we used to rotate who would go with me so that they can have coffee.
A cup of coffee, that was like your lunch.
Airtel coffee. This fantastic. I think we internally took a bet that one day by this year end, we will earn as much size and the money that we can get that coffee machine.
One coffee machine.
One coffee machine.
That was fantastic. These guys in there, they must have given you some fun times. Not them, but just generally in your...
I've had the pleasure of interacting with all of them during their fundraising activities.
Fundraising?
Their fundraising and fundraising.
Fundraising for investors. Fundraising for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And I think Kunal was... I didn't even work for SoftBank, but my boss called me and said, "Hey, I met this really smart guy who should definitely invest his company. I made him an incredible offer, but he said no, and he's gone back. Can you do something about it?" So that was my first introduction to Kunal. So I spent the first 3 weeks of
You said no? My God. Not bad.
Well, that's part of being an entrepreneur, knowing when to say yes.
What percentage of people do you say no to on average? What, 90%? 1 out of 10?
Let's look at it the other way around. Between what Masa has invested at SoftBank and between what we've done the last 14, 15 months, we have a collection of 17 companies.
17 now?
That's it.
Wow.
And of those, probably 8 or 10 have happened in the last 14 months.
But even 17 is a lot, actually. But 17 out of 170 you've met.
17 out of about Remember, we don't have to meet 170. We're late stage investors, so we scan the market. We know what's going on in the market. We have a reasonably good mapping of every company in India which is going to hit a certain scale.
Right.
We already
So
know
when
that.
a
So we call
person
people. So like, Ritesh actually got a call from us as opposed to him calling us. Vijay and us met through one of his fundraising efforts.
So if somebody is a reasonable scale or starting up and they get a no, what should they do? You feel demoralized? What would you say?
No, I think,
to
look,
them?
again, different.
You just say my mistake. Could be your mistake.
Look,
right?
there are many mistakes. There are many. There are in all the success stories of investing, there are many stories where people say, "Oh my God, I didn't invest in Facebook. Or I didn't invest in Uber. I didn't invest in YouTube or Google." So there are so many stories of people who have not invested when they had the opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's from an investor's perspective, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, I have to get 6 out of 10 right.
Right.
And if I miss a
6
few,
is
it doesn't
bloody
matter.
good, man.
These guys are on the hook for 1 out of 1. If they don't make their 1 work, they're in deep trouble. They have to start all over again. So we have life is a lot easier. That's why the semi-cerebral guys do what I do, and the cerebral guys do what they do.
You hit the right spot.
So from our perspective, if you get a no, it's not that you got a no. It should be taken as one more data point, as Kunal said. It's feedback.
Right.
And you have to interpret the feedback and say, what was the reason why that I got a no?
Yeah.
Now, the reason could be because you haven't thought about your business model right, or you've thought about it right and we just don't get it. Okay, no, we're not the smartest guys in the world. These people have a better idea sometimes, and they will make it happen against all odds. But usually when we say no, it's because maybe the company is too early in its life cycle. Maybe there are 50 competitors. We're not sure which one is going to out-execute the other.
Right.
Maybe they're not at the right scale, and we're not in the small investment business. We're in the large-scale, late-stage investing business. So it may very well be a mandate issue, because remember, I have a team of 15 people, and we pride ourselves on actually spending a lot of time with management. We spend a lot of time with the 2 out of the 3 people here, as much time as they need. So there's only so much scale that we can create in terms of companies that we can support. And we want to be there for the very long term, right?
So in your fundraising, who was the funniest guy that came along and asked for money? You can think of
I think around this table it's got to be this guy.
You can't mention any of these.
Around this panel it's got to be this guy. He came to my house. Actually, all these guys have come to my house. He came to my house.
Apart from these, there's some
He almost fell in the water pool outside as he was rushing out of my house.
He saw you and rushed out.
No, he didn't do that. We had very good conversation.
Any nutcases that have come?
No, nobody's a nutcase. They're all very smart entrepreneurs.
Right. In that case, on that point, we should only a semi-nutcase.
So I'm going to give a hack for entrepreneurs, which is what I've learned over the period in meetings, that how do you figure out this guy is going to say no? Or maybe he's going to say no or not.
Yeah.
So ask a question. If you were in my shoes, how would you run this company? If the company that he's telling you is not the company that you're hearing, 90% chances are you going to get a no.
The one he describes as something totally different.
And then you say,
anyway, I don't want it.
Now I know that I'm not running the way it has to be, which effectively means that I will get a time lag, which is called, let's keep in touch, we're going to see you soon.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to finish.
Yeah.
One of the crazier gentlemen, I think both Kunal and I met last year, was at CES. We were sitting around dinner, and he's a young entrepreneur like many people there. And he started telling a story about he freezes his jeans. So he had.
No, this is a family channel.
He had 5 or 6 pairs of jeans, and he decided that
he
says like he freezes his jeans, as in
denim
pant. And he says when you freeze your clothes, it kills all the germs in it, so you can then unfreeze them and wear them, so you don't have to worry about washing them.
Very good point. Yeah. So you've been doing that ever since?
No. I'm telling you, that was when I met him last year. He came and visited me 10 months later, and I said, "What happened? You were freezing your jeans. Are you still doing that?" He said, "No.
I now boil them.
It's too complicated because there's a compressor, and I don't want a compressor in my house. It's energy inefficient.
Oh.
So." He didn't want the compressor, and it's too complicated to wear different clothes. So he wears the same clothes every day, i.e. the same color jeans, the same color T-shirt. He chooses between black and white once in a while. So then what he did 8 months later, he decided it was too complicated to do it, so he went on Alibaba and bought himself, I think, 70 or 80 pairs of jeans and 365 T-shirts. And he paid like $2 each for the T-shirt, and he paid probably $20 for the pairs of jeans. So he said about $1,500. He now has a stash of clothes that he can wear the entire year
without freezing.
Without freezing, he
changing,
just gives them
washing.
away. He
Oh,
just gives them
that's
away. After he's done wearing them, every week he takes them and
He's
gives
going
them
to be
away.
$100 billion.
So $1,500 this is his entire clothing expense. He doesn't have to worry about laundry. He doesn't have to think in the morning what he should wear. He doesn't have to think about anything.
See, they're all slightly nutcases, right? These guys. So, this just you're giving an
it's
example.
innovative,
It's
right?
not as innovative. Yeah,
But
they're
you see,
innovative
if you
nutcases.
if you think about perfect balance,
Yeah.
that everybody has a little bit of everything, then the question is how do you find the passion? So sometimes some people have a lot of this, but they miss out on a lot of that.
Yeah.
So it all depends which way it's stacked up. Now,
And I
you
won't
may not-
ask you which way they are stacked. I mean, you're all demi-eccentric. Eccentric is a nice word.
And by the way, we
You're proud to be
actually,
demi-eccentric.
as the more successful they get, the more eccentric they get as well.
Start freezing their jeans. But thank you all very much, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye for now.